So Sean, these were front row seats for what happened in there not so long ago. The three leaders of the major parties in Nova Scotia had their first head-to-head in CBC's debate.
Well, what's interesting is we didn't really have the kind of disastrous debate that Biden had with Trump in the States, and we didn't have a really defining moment like we did back in 1998.
Will you resign as Premier of this province? Yes or no?
Do you wish to respond, or shall Mr. Ham continue?
That was seen as a turning point in that election where the Liberals barely hung on to power in that vote.
Yeah, so no major gaffes in this debate. There was a lot of leaders talking over each other, everyone trying to get their voice heard and trying to get the last word.
When it is housing, we make housing. When it is not appropriate for housing, then we don't, but we make the decision.
And we didn't hear really anything new from the three leaders. We would heard well-worn phrases, well-worn slogans. We heard them in the House, we've heard them in the lead up to this election and through this election. But for anyone who was kind of tuning in for the first time, it would have been the first time they'd have heard some of what the leaders had to say in terms of laying out their platform.
Right, we heard some of the new platform promises that have just come out during this election campaign over the last few weeks, but no big announcements, except for Churchill saying that if he was elected Premier and he doesn't live up to all of the promises he made, things that he calls a contract with Nova Scotians, he says he wouldn't run again.
Well, it ended up an interesting line from Chender after the debate, speaking to reporters who basically said, look, he'll never get a chance to do that, a suggestion that his party will not win government.
It was also interesting to hear Claudia Chender addressing the other leaders by their first names, while they were a bit more formal with Mr. Churchill and Miss Chender, but she was right out the gates calling out Tim Houston as Tim and talking to Churchill as Zach.
Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks, Tim and Zach.
Really sending the signal that she has found her place with these two other leaders at the podium in this election.
And let's remember that Nova Scotia has never had a female premier.
So whether this actually changes anybody's mind, well, we won't know that until Election Day. What this does, though, and what the leaders are really trying to do, is energize their base, and make their volunteers excited about what's to come, which is 12 days of slog, making sure now that you've identified the vote to get those people to the polls and marking their ballots.